So Dee Ford also got restructured. So this one was interesting to me because Dee Ford is probably not in the long term plans. I don't know how he can be at this point. This man is never healthy. I talked about how the 49ers can free up a lot of money. I expected for them to get under the cap, and maybe they still do this, being that they have to be under the cap here in just over 12 hours. Unless they trade Jimmy, they're going to have to move some money around. So I expect Armstead to get restructured. I expect Ward, Jimmy Ward, that is. We have two of them now in the secondary. I expect him to get restructured, not restructured, but extended. That'll free up around 16 million. So I expect those things to happen or something similar to that. I did not see this Dee Ford one coming. Caught me a bit by surprise. What are your thoughts on Dee Ford being restructured?
Yeah, I mean, it saves what, 4 million or something like that, 4.5 million, something like
Mhm.
that. I think a lot of teams are starting to utilize future cap in 2023, 2024 as a tool to be able to move forward. And I think this is just the 49ers doing that. Using the cap that they think is going to go up exponentially with the new TV deal in 2023, 2024, and fit in some of the dead cap space there, because the dead cap on the salary cap this year is much more impactful than the dead cap next year. So I think it was just a tool like that. I don't really believe D4 is going to have any type of meaningful impact play wise on this team. I mean, we thought he was going to be able to play some last season. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition very long. I don't think it's going to be any different this season, but I'm cool with it. I think they're trying to get money wherever they can, and we saw Green Bay do it with the Aaron Rodgers deal. I think they're just like, let's try to save as much money right now as possible, and then we'll worry about next year when the cap number moves up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought I didn't understand how restructures work because I questioned this one. I definitely know how they work. My question with this is why, right? I understand that you're trying to free up money now, but you have other avenues to do that. Okay. Mainly, why the hell is Jimmy still on this roster? That's one. Two, the other two moves that I just talked about easily get you to where you need to be. So kicking the can down the road on a Dee Ford, which I get, saves you 4.5 million this year. Maybe that is more important than the money next year, but you are still going to have to pay that money, and you're going to have to do that next year for a guy that, whether he retires or not, you owe that to him. So, yes, the salary cap is supposed to go up a ton, but you are still paying this man and you are doing it next year. For me, I'm not a fan of kicking the can down the road and paying guys that I know are not going to be contributors, probably not even going to be a part of this team next year. And we're going to have to pay that money. It's just not something I'm a big fan of. Yes, the money goes way up, but I also know that the contracts for Bosa, Debo most likely kick in next year. Obviously, Armstead's money is way up. So is Williams. His money goes way up. So they're going to need this money to play around with. Every dollar will count, even going forward. So I wasn't a big fan of it. I do understand it. It was just kind of a weird one to me. It came out of left field. Now, if it's something like what they did with Richburg, where they restructured and then basically he retired, understandable. I get that. But this doesn't seem to be the case here with that one. If they had just waited till June, they could have saved 2.5 million. Yes, that is less than 4.5, but they're not pushing as much money down the road. So for me, wasn't the biggest fan of it, but I understand the reasoning for it. It is a little bit different when you are running the front office. Totally understand that.
Jesse, I do want to say one thing
Yeah.
before we move on. I do think the 49ers are going to make a big splash this offseason. It just sounds like they're trying to get a lot more money than they technically need if they're just going to bring back their own players or like deal type free agents. I do think a guy like Chandler Jones caliber type player is coming to the team, which is why you're seeing these type of just an extra 2 million here, extra 1 million here. I believe that they're gonna extend or restructure Armstead, Jimmy Ward, Ebicom, and Emmanuel Mosley. I think they give him a long-term deal as well to try to get more money. Plus, Jimmy's coming off the books as well. I think they're going to have quite a bit of money to play, and they just saw the Rams, what they did as far as the type of talent they brought in. They saw what Arizona did, the type of talent they brought in. I think the 49ers are ready to play that type of game and maximize, not having to pay a quarterback as much as these other teams are paying a quarterback.
Yeah, and maybe that's a possibility. Also, maybe they're looking forward and saying, oh gosh, and we'll talk about this in a second, but we might have to cut Jimmy, which means we're going to have to eat $7.5 million right away. Now we will get that money back once he signs with another team, and he most inevitably will. But if that's a possibility, oh my gosh, like we're going to need this money. So I can understand it. Let me wait to see what happens from this before I make a full judgment. But right off the bat, I was like, not a big fan of it. Not my favorite thing. But maybe you're right. The problem is that unless these guys are willing to take a lot less money, they kind of made their big splash with Ward. Now, we don't have the details of the deal. I know JC Jackson signed. His deal was a big deal, but only $8 million is actually due this year. I don't know what they're doing with Ward or how they're working that in, or what they could do with a future signing like you're talking about, Chandler Jones, Bobby Wagner. But they really don't have much more left in the bag to make these moves. You can only move around so much money, and at max, it's around 33 million that they can free up through that. Obviously, another 25 or so with Jimmy, but you're already over the cap around 16. So that eats up a lot. You've got about 7 million that's allocated to your rookies. You just signed Ward already. Plus, you've got to fill out the rest of the roster. There isn't really a lot of wiggle room, even if they free up a mill here, a mill there. It's going to be tough to get a big name guy, and one of those guys could come, but they're going to have to play ball a little bit and maybe take a little bit less money. And